And this is WP Watercooler's Dev Branch, episode number 3. It's kind of funny how episode number 3 makes it sound like we've only been doing this for just like a couple weeks or months or whatever, but we've actually been doing this show or a version of the show, which was WP Watercooler, for the last 7 years. And we thought we would kind of branch it off and turn it into a development show. And so we wanted to kind of start something off here and kind of make something happen. So we thought we'd do a Dev Branch, which is our development show. So we're going to be talking about local WordPress development tools and kind of how you can use those things. But before we get into that, I want to let you know that this episode of WP Watercooler is brought to you by ServerPress, makers of desktop server. They make local WordPress development easy. Go check them out over at serverpress.com. And if you're using ServerPress, you should definitely be checking out WP Site Sync, which is a great tool for being able to sync up stuff between the different website instances that you have. So take a look at that over at serverpress.com. Let's go around the room real quick. We have a very large room today with many people. Russell Aaron, tell us about yourself.
Yo, what's up? I'm Russell Aaron from home these days, as you know, most people are. I'm actually enjoying it. I run, co-organize stuff like that with the Las Vegas WordPress meetup group, and just kicking it, hanging out. I love Dev Branch and Watercooler, and I can't believe it's 7 years. It doesn't seem like that long in some ways, and then in this way, it's like 7 years. Like, that's a lot. We're on 350 something. Like, that's a lot, man.
A lot of content we've been putting out. Cosper, what's up, bro? How's it going?
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Y'all know who it is. It's your boy, Jason Cosper, a.k.a. Fat Mullenweg. Just here to talk some WordPress, talk some local dev environments today. Excited to do it, man. Let's get into it. But first, Jason, how about you tell us about yourself?
Sure. I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me over at Jason Tucker on Twitter. I do this show as well as 2 other shows, which is WP Watercooler, as well as Dev Branch, as well as WP Blab. Wow, I confused myself there. And we just did WP Blab today, and we talked about effective marketing copy as empathy. And it was a lot of fun. We had some really great kind of discussion points there of talking about empathy and how empathetic people should be when writing copy, so that way people will want to go click on it and want to do stuff with it. But
sure.
Go take a look at that. You can go over to wpwatercooler.com/wpblab, where you can learn about that show. It's the social media marketing show for WordPress.
I like what she was saying. She was like, other people have businesses. We're writing copy for people who don't know how to do this for their business,
Yeah,
really
exactly.
Yeah.
That was fun. I had a good time.
Ooh.
So
what are we talking about, Jason?
Yeah, let's talk about local WordPress development. So I wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit here and discuss like why you would even want to do local WordPress development to begin with. But we use the term, at least in the Orange County, LA area, we use the term cowboy coding, which I know a lot of other places also use cowboy coding. The idea that you just spin up a site on your server, you start messing with it in place, and then if things break, things break. And if things don't break, then hey, maybe you lucked out,
Right.
Sometimes that's okay. If you got your little cat blog and you're just going to throw some stuff on there and make it happen, then that's no big deal. But if you're running like a multi-billion-dollar industry or some crazy, huge, really crazy website, you kind of want to do that elsewhere. And that would either be on a local development or maybe in staging. And so why would you use local development versus using something like staging? Let's start with that first. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Cosper.
Well, I was going to say, I tend to use a local environment when I'm kind of sketching out a site idea. Even though I work for a web host and have multiple web hosting accounts like elsewhere, that I can basically spin up a site at my whim, I really like to do things locally when I have an idea that I want to try out. I don't necessarily want to commit to putting it out into the world. So the tool that I like to use for this is Valet. It is a little more, it leans more on the developer side of things. It's a tool put out by Laravel, that has like built-in WordPress support, and there's even WP CLI support that you can add to basically spin up new sites with WP CLI under Laravel. So as I'm like kind of command line driven, it's really comfortable for me to just spin up a new site, and then when I'm done with it, I can delete it, I can move it wherever I need to move it, and then that's that. But that's kind of why I tend to work local. Russ?
I use local. I like to think of it like a playground. So like Cosper, I have an idea for this blog that I want to do, and I'm like, all right, let's see if I can build this. So I'll install a theme, or like I'll install Bootstrap, and I'll just start messing with things. And it's not something that I have to go pay for, or I have to install on my host. I have this thing that I can do locally. That's for me personally. Now, running support and doing things like that, we would have customers that would want us to, build or update a plugin or do something like that. And for me, I would install their site locally, so I have an exact copy of what they have on their production, and I can say, "This is the steps it takes to, get to your end goal." And we could do that, and we knew everything that was going to happen, or we could simulate what was going to happen, and that potentially lowers the threshold of crashing your site just because you're writing new code, or you're updating, or you're doing something. Like you get to test it 1,000 times on this local versus trying to do it once on production. That's for me.
Yeah.
That's local.
That's cool. And so these tools that we're using, and I'm gonna get to me in a minute, but these tools that we're using, are they are they spinning up like a instance of Apache on the server? Like, is it running at there, or is it running it in a Docker container, or is it running, like, how are these usually set up? Because I know they're all different. What do you like?
Okay,
How does
so
how does, I know I just kind of set that up weird, but like, how do you, like, if you, like, for instance, with local, is local using a Docker container, or is it running it like using just like the Apache or whatever Nginx that's running on your Mac?
no, it's using Docker. I have 3 local sites. I have local, even though I use Valet, I like to see like what else is out there in other tools. I have a local setup going. I have 3 sites running on it. They each have their own Docker container, everything, each containers, everything else. I will say that those 3 Docker containers on my machine currently weigh in at about 48 gigabytes.
Wow.
They can, yeah. That is one of the reasons that, that's one of the reasons that I tend to like Valet over something like local. Valet, when you install it, it just has a handful of packages that install on your Mac or Windows machine locally. There's no Docker containers, no anything else. It runs Nginx, it runs PHP, and just very close. Like the amount of memory that needs to be used. How long, Russ, does it take, even on your computer with an SSD and everything else? How long does it take for local to actually start running? Like 20, 30 seconds?
So I used local by lightning, and it's or local lightning. It's a new thing that they're coming out with, and that's actually quicker now. But in some cases, yeah, sure, 30 seconds is the most I think it's taken for that to spin up. And like even using Manline with VVV or something, that would take a couple seconds to spin up. So I'm not too hard on it that way. The size does get me. When I was working support, I actually had a different Mac, and that was my work one, and then this is my my personal one, and I had to separate that because I had 30 clients at any point that I would have to install a site for, and 30 times 48 gigs, like that's the entire hard drive if I decided to be cheap in 2015, which y'all know I was. So, like that's one of the instances that I started venturing out from a server press from a local, and when I started at WDS, everybody was on VVV. That was just what you did, and I wasn't a terminal command line kind of person. kind of got me into doing that, and I think for the better actually, because now I'm not afraid of like the CLI or anything like that, but I used to kind of be,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. I jump around between. I'm kind of like Cosper in that I jump around between a couple of these technologies to just kind of see what's what. Yeah, exactly. Just kind of see what's
CLI makes
what.
you want to jump.
And it's I think I'm too old school for this. For one, I don't work with anyone else doing any of the development work, so I'm doing everything myself. Two, I'm usually just spinning up a site that I'm going to have Beaver Builder on, and I'm going to drag and drop a bunch of boxes and hit save, and I'm good. And then I'm kind of collaborating with other people. So for the most part, I think it would probably not be as beneficial to me to have it running locally, because the fact that I'm going to have other people that are going to be essentially looking at it at the exact same time, if not modifying it right then and there. And so for me, I've been leveraging a lot of staging site type of situations with like WP Engine, where I just throw it on a staging site, build it, and then push it to production, or use something like WP Site Sync to go between the two, because it has Beaver Builder support. So for me, I don't do it as much locally like that.
Local and WP Engine have actually, and so what they're doing is they have WP Engine has an API key in the backend. It's called Connect, and then you tie it to local, and then you can pull and push between them, and so like that's why I'm back to local doing this.
Right. Yeah. Where that used to be owned by Flywheel, which had its own separate thing, and Flywheel was the one that was kind of you'd have to be hosted through Flywheel if you wanted to use those types of connections to kind of get it all going. I was never hosted through Flywheel, so I never really used that part of it. But I'm with WP Engine, so I could definitely try it in.
I was going to say one of the things that I like also about Valet, if I do want to show what I'm working on with somebody without having to set it up to staging or anything else, it has a way to share sites through a tool called ngrok, which basically gives you kind of like a dynamic DNS, like domain, ngrok.io, like whatever the random characters it throws on before that. It's not the fastest because you're serving it up from your local computer. And I always try to tell people, like, okay, don't look at the speed of this, because you're using my really crappy Spectrum connection. So that's, not the best indicator of how fast this will be. But when I do have to, like you, Jason, I tend to do projects that are only really like for me, and I'm not working with anyone else.
Yeah.
So when I do that, I send stuff up, and it's like, hey, let's take a look. Like, I finally have something to show, like the person I'm working for or with or whatever. And then
those numbers that local URL, those are actually Lotto suggestions. So you should go play those.
Oh, I should. That's a good idea. So, I was going to say, now I don't want to stomp on where you were going, Jason, but I kind of do want to give some props to where a lot of this got started, which is MAMP and WAMP.
Right.
And like back in the day, like they paved the road for a lot of this working on sites locally. MAMP and WAMP, specifically, I think WAMP is the one that kind of got it started, which is Apache, MySQL, and PHP running under Windows, and then they made a Mac fork. And Linux has always been able to run. Yeah,
I think it was, but then there was always XAMPP, Z or XAMMP or something like that. That was the alternative, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, just
we're going
on.
It's all right. We're good.
We're going way back to like the famous 5-minute install days is what we're doing, man.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of these tools, as time has gone on, has made it easier for like, okay, you can just install WordPress on this very quickly, especially as WordPress's market share has ticked up. We're at 36% of the web now. So being able to have a specialized tool that actually, instead of just like, I remember early on, like in the early going of local
Oh, your
WordPress
audio
set
cut
up.
out.
Oh no.
Your audio has
Hold on.
been cutting out a little bit, Cosper. I don't know if it's because your video signal's jacked up because you're routing through a VCR, but
How's that? How's this? Is this a little better?
yeah,
Yeah.
you're doing a little better.
Okay.
When we're talking
Um,
about WAMP and LAMP and XAMPP and all that stuff, a lot of those tools were being used by ServerPress. ServerPresses itself
yes.
ran off of those things, and so some of them, booted up an entire virtual machine, like full on virtual machine, to run everything off of. And talk about huge. I mean, you're talking about your Docker containers being crazy, but like having an entire OS running on like that, just it seemed like you'd essentially have to run a virtual server application, on the computer that you're running your stuff through. So it's either a Windows app or it's a Linux distro or something like that. So with the Docker containers, at least it's trying to like minimize as much as possible that without having to boot the entire thing up like that. But it really just comes.
What's really cool about Docker is in ways that you can save instances of Docker, then you can share those with other people, and so it's not like you have to push and say, here's how to retrace my steps to even check my code. Here, you can just have this now, and it's like having a
Right.
backup of it. So I'm curious to see where we're going to go in the future and see how that's going to decrease in size. They need to get Silicon Valley over there to do like some middle out compression, something like that. Yeah.
I was gonna like what I was kind of getting at before my microphone started to cut out was like the road that WAMP and MAMP paved effectively led way, like James said, to ServerPress that started to do specific versions of MAMP specifically for WordPress, which is wonderful and everything else. And then along came to kind of give like an abridged history lesson, a brief Reader's Digest version.
Hurry up! Murder She Wrote comes on at 6, so hurry up.
So and then we ended up getting VVV. WP Engine before they had local had one called the HGV Mercury, and there were a few other projects out there that kind of had that local environment that used stuff like I mean it was using Vagrant effectively for all of that, using different types of virtual machines, stuff like that, VirtualBox, VMware, etc. And then along came the Docker solutions, which is great because you can actually, like Russ said, share those Docker containers with people and be doing the same thing. And now, we're starting to get these more specialized. I love Valet. If it hasn't been clear in the past 18 minutes, I love Valet so much because I feel like, when you watch those samurai movies and there's, everyone's got their samurai sword and they really love it. But then the guy comes out and he's got that little stubby samurai sword, but he manages to just wreck. He just manages to wreck everybody in his path. And he's just got this stubby little sword. That's what it is. Like I can cut people real quick with my Valet install. I can get done what needs to be done, and I can fight these people with these long frickin' swords. And I don't need to dedicate a whole butt ton of resources to to Docker containers or Vagrant and stuff like that. It gets out of the way. The second I need a site, I can have a site. I don't need to wait for anything to start up. I don't need to wait. I don't need to close the process because my Chrome install and Vagrant are fighting it out for who's going to use more memory. Like I can just run it and it does what it needs to do.
Yep.
I mean, I just have a thing that I go click and it just, works. So I don't have to touch the command line. I don't have to remember commas or did I add a semicolon or did I, is it like get and add -b or all tables? Like I just fire up local and go click and it's just there. And, you really
I know I'm
can't compete with that, man.
I know I'm a special kind of person because I've been using Linux since 1996, and I know that that's a flex. That I've been using Linux for 24 years now. Wow, I hate saying that out loud. That makes me feel
You're
like
old,
such
bro.
an old ass. Yeah,
you're old just like me because I did the same thing.
right. So yeah, it's something I'm comfortable with. And as a developer, as you start to get a little more into server stuff, I've actually told people this, the more comfortable you get with server stuff, the longer a career you'll have, because things will, programming languages will come and go. Eventually when we make this switch from, that in the next 10 years, WordPress might not even be on PHP anymore. It could be entirely once the REST API,
React.
all React, all JavaScript. They might rewrite the core of it in Go or Rust or something like that. Something wild. Who even knows? The future is unwritten. But and all that time that people have sunk into PHP, all the old graybeards will be like, "Oh, I remember when WordPress was PHP." But you know what? If you know server stuff, you'll still have a career, because a lot of that stuff in the 24 years I've been using Linux, a lot of that stuff hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
the more,
once I learned Nginx, like once I learned actually Nginx and how WP Engine does it versus Rackspace versus other companies, like now I'm even more able to go install WP Rocket and set them up next and tweak their comp files and use something like on GitHub, what is it, WP Rocket for Nginx, and so like that sets up that whole thing. Like you said, it's only given me longevity to say, all right, when I go apply for a new job or something, I can say, dude, I do this now. And it's almost going to be the minimum. You're seeing a lot more hosts go towards Nginx, and, whatever the new flavor after Nginx comes out, we'll all go to that, like
Right.
I know Varnish will go away soon, but I know that for some reason. And I knew Apache, and you have to keep up with it, I think is what you're trying to say. Like, you're not gonna have an option in like 10 years.
I had a coworker 10 years ago who said, "I really
Advanced custom fields, please be here in 10 years. I still need ACF. Like, I'm not doing WordPress without ACF. Is all I'm saying."
I had a coworker 10 years ago who said to me, "I'm going to learn Rails. I'm going to learn Ruby. I'm going to get deep into Rails. That seems to be where a lot of things are going." And 10 years ago, that's what it looked like. Now it looks like JavaScript, and it looks like I said, Go and Rust. And now you look at it, and if he had taken, I said, you know what? You can learn Rails, but learn about the server, the underlying structure of things that it runs on, and you'll have a longer career, because when Rails dries up, and it will dry up,
half of those names deter me. Like, I don't want to go check out Bourbon because I know Neat is just this other flavor of that, and I know Cucumber is going to come out later to that, and then there's going to be Chandelier, which is going to be this other thing. So like, I wish you would name something that makes me want to use your service, because honestly, like, installing Cucumber on Brew just doesn't sound interesting enough to get me to do it. Is all I'm saying.
I mean, who wants to learn to spell Kubernetes, let alone learn how to run something under Kubernetes?
That's why Node and all that, and using NPM and themes, it always kind of deterred me, like Grunt, because are you using Grunt? Are you using Bower? Are you doing this? And it's like, no, I'm just trying to add CSS, like padding left 10 pixels. Like, where do I do that? How do I sign up for that?
So I wanted to spend our last couple minutes here talking about more nerdier stuff, which is the fact that you're essentially able to do a lot of this configuration stuff command line wise, and being able to, especially like with Valet, literally like one long, not even long, but one command line. You just say like the directory that I'm currently in, turn on a server for me, and it goes boom, and then the server boots up. All the files that are in there are up and running. Everything just kind of works. Other ones where, it's like you need to go and run this command and install the following items, or, you have ServerPress where it has its blueprint system, so you can use blueprints to kind of pull all those things together. And all of these are able to be done in a command line interface, which means that you can automate it. And I'm a huge automation fan where I love spending 4 hours building out a thing that's going to save me like 5 minutes a week.
4 hours? Like, were you in a hurry or something?
Right. I'm writing like the world's craziest bash script that's going to do all this craziness. And then it's just going to go and say, okay, here's your server, boop, and here's all the files and everything's installed and we're all good to go.
This is why I have Alfred. So Alfred is a Mac app, and on Alfred you can build workflows. So like you can type in, like I could type in water cooler, and then that command says, "I open up PHP Storm and open up this folder or this project, open up local and do this." Like, Alfred lets me do that. And so I used to, when I'd be at WDS and they'd say like, "Hey, you're, like do this thing for this company," I would just type in whatever their little short code was I had, and it just up, and I'm ready to go.
So, Cosper, you mentioned VVV. Can you speak on that a little bit? You mentioned it in the chat, but can you speak on VVV?
I mean, VVV, kind of when I was giving my long but abridged history lesson, VVV is Vagrant. It is kind of the watermark. I know that they use it a lot at 10up. They were using it at 10up for a lot of their projects. I can't really speak to what they're using now. I'm sure that they tend to still like their in-house tools for that stuff.
Right.
I'm sure they have some kind of fork of Vagrant that they're using, and it's called like 10up V or V10 or something like that.
Right.
It's probably got some cool name, man. Like,
well, even that has a command line interface as well to execute it and get it all set up.
Yeah.
Right. And that was but before I came upon the simplicity that is Valet, VVV was like the industry standard and my favorite. I didn't love VirtualBox so much. I don't know about the rest of you. If you've spent any time running anything under VirtualBox, it sucks butt.
VirtualBox
is awful.
VirtualBox is the digital coronavirus. Like that is just, VirtualBox is everywhere on my hard drive, dude. Like you can't sanitize my hard drive enough.
Rough, dude.
Russ, we made 27.5 minutes into the show and you said the C word.
You brought up that, dude. Like, don't bring up like the worst thing ever. Sorry.
At least what's nice about, with all this stuff, you can just go and run it from a command line. Even having VirtualBox boot up and do the stuff can be done that way. You're right though. VirtualBox sucks because it's booting up this huge, full-featured operating system, which literally can run Mac on a Mac if you wanted to. Like you could be able to do that sort of.
It builds new virtual environments, and each virtual environment has like 5 gigs dedicated to it, and then it's doing this or dude, like it gets wild after a while. Not only that, but then like the hardest thing for me with Vagrant was I actually used little add-ons that would like make up backups to the database when you would power off or you go Vagrant down or whatever. So updating those little plugins along with Vagrant, like I had to have this blueprint in my head of how this command line works to talk to it, just to even be updated. Like that's, I think, what I'm over with VVV and any command line is I just don't want to remember all that or remember what I have to do to type it in. I just want to hit click and go, man. And
you've got enough PHP in your head. You don't need to start muddying all that up, right? There's no way for you to learn JavaScript deeply if you have to also remember some command line stuff. I'm horrible at JavaScript, but I'm great at the command line.
It's funny, man.
Well, with that being said, I want to say thank you for both of you for coming and hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure having you guys be able to jump on and start talking about fun stuff. I love that we actually have a place that we can do this sort of thing. And being able to do it. So go over to our website over at WPwatercooler.com. You can take a look at all the links that we have over there. We put the links for the show notes there as well. If you're watching this thing on YouTube, hit the little subscribe button, hit the bell, do all that fun stuff. If you're watching on Facebook, hit the share button. Hit the share button. Share this in one of the groups that you're in on Facebook. And if you're watching us on Twitter, we love retweets. So hit us up. We appreciate that. Talk to y'all later. You have a good one.
Retweets.
Bye.
Bye.